All right, good evening, everybody. It's the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville, Nate, and Big Joe as we get to here to talk to you about the world of sports at large and mostly football because all football is all that's happening right now. We have Notre Dame leading 13-3 at halftime over the Georgia Bulldogs. We have Ohio State took care of business easily yesterday. Penn State is waiting in the next round for Notre Dame. I believe it's next Monday. And then Texas and Ohio State will be the Friday game. So a lot of football going on in the NCAAs. We have the last week of the regular season in the NFL. A few slots to fill in, but we know most of the people that are going to be there. Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, buddy. If you'd have told me that we were going to be up 34 to nothing on Oregon, I would have told you that I love you. And I just, you can say whatever you want to, but the difference in the game is, we played at Oregon, several weeks ago now, and we couldn't get any pressure on Dylan Gabriel. And everybody wanted to blame Denzel Burke for getting burned. Well, yeah, he got burned because he had to cover somebody for 10 minutes. Yesterday, we had 8 sacks. Yeah. Cody Simon had 2. Jack Sawyer had 2. JT Talamula had 2. Tyreek Williams had 1. And there was, I think, Lathan Ransom, or a safety blitz, had another one. So 8 sacks versus 0. That's the difference in the game. And Jack Sawyer and JT Talamula have been playing lights out. And to be honest, each one of them got held about 5 times each, and they didn't call it. And obviously, I'm a Buckeye homer, but go back and watch the tape yourself, and you will see that they were grabbing those guys all game long. So, our defense is playing lights out right now, and our offense is starting fast. And you put those two things together, and you get 2 ass whippings in a row.
Well, yeah, and Howard looks really good, but I mean, man, that freshman wide receiver they got. I mean, I don't know where they it's like a production line at Ohio State for the last decade of pulling out great wide receiver after great wide receiver. I don't know who's done more, them or LSU. But my God, he just dominated the whole you know the whole field yesterday. And I don't know. You sit there, and I know you want it all. But if I've told you this on Thanksgiving Day weekend that Michigan had delivered a wake up call and you'll say woken a sleeping giant, it looks like they have right now.
Yeah, and was I upset about the Michigan game? I was. I didn't like the game plan. I didn't like the play calling. I didn't like putting that quarterback in after he was almost certainly concussed. I didn't like a lot of things that happened that weekend, but I also, played college football, and I understand that it was a rivalry game, and it doesn't matter what the records are when those two teams play. Each one of them is going to fight tooth and nail to try and win, and you don't know who's going to win that game, because I've seen it before where Ohio State's 12-0 and Michigan's 4-8 and they beat their ass. I've seen it before where Michigan's 11-1, 10-2, and Ohio State's 6-6, and Ohio State wins. So you never really know. But to sit there and say that the coach should be fired for going 10-2 and has a record of 60 whatever it is and 10 is ridiculous. And you know what? I don't hear many of those people talking right now. But those are the same people that'll be buying championship shirts, if they win it all. And the morons wanted to fire the coach 3 weeks ago.
Well, it's become a trend in all sports now. Is like push people out the door. I mean, when we were growing up watching football, I mean, it wasn't it wasn't the craziness that goes on now. Whatever sport it is. I mean, the way they fire managers and coaches, and how do you expect to ever get, as they say, build a atmosphere or build a culture if you don't give them a time to build a culture? And I mean, Ryan Day's been highly successful since he went there. You're not going to get better than him. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous.
Well,
this is what the more they do this, the more you expand playoff rounds and things like that, the more chances there are going to be for upsets and things. It just yeah, it's funny. not to get off the track, but I mean, when you think about baseball, okay, before there were playoffs in baseball, the Yankees were 20-9 in World Series because they only used to play in the World Series. Since then, they've won 7 World Series. So, the more playoffs you put in, the more chances you have of getting upset. It's just the way it is.
Everybody's like, well, he doesn't win the big game. Well, when you play a top 5 team, your margin of error goes down, and the likelihood of you winning goes down. And guess what? He's beat like 5 top 5 teams in the last 8 weeks. So it's not that he can't do it. It's just that it's difficult. And if you look, that's one thing that concerned me last night was we got up so big, and I was like, oh God, I hope that we keep our foot on the gas, because if you remember a couple of years ago in Atlanta, where the game is going on right now, we were beating the crap out of Georgia. We're just doing whatever we wanted to do. And then, that hit on Marvin Harrison Jr., that pretty much ended the game for us, because, we were already missing 2 wideouts. We were missing both our running backs. We were missing one of our tackles. And then when Marvin Harrison went out and they took away the targeting, that was pretty much it. And, you got to play 4 quarters, and you have to keep your foot on the gas. And luckily last night, they definitely did.
Let's go back to the Penn State game a couple days ago. It seems like forever now. They came out and took care of business against Boise State. And you and I talked about this yesterday. I mean, there's no way Boise should have been given a home game. They're in a mediocre conference. It is what it is. I don't mind them making the playoffs, but there's no reason why you can't reseed and have the top teams get the bye over a team like Boise State, who it didn't seem like it helped them either to have the extra time off. A lot of people were talking about that, and I listened to a lot of the shows today, and they were talking to how the guys that had the bye seem to be the guys that are struggling. And it unfortunately, this is the way it's going to be until and I don't even ever Boise State will pick up to them. But the biggest thing that came out of that game, we always talk about it. James Franklin finally won, I guess you'd say, a couple of big games in a row. Does this help, or is it just fool's gold?
Well, they got the greatest draw that I've ever seen in any tournament format ever. I mean, getting lined up to play SMU, who questionable that they should have even been in it. If you watch the game against Penn State, it looked really like they shouldn't have been in it. They got blown out in the first half against Clemson. They mounted a little bit of a comeback in the second half, but really got handled in that ACC championship game. And then, against Penn State, they just didn't really look like a playoff team. And then they win that and then get to play Boise State, in the second round. So, things set. You can't blame James Franklin for that. He can only play who he plays, who's on his schedule, and his team is set up to play. But let's be honest, man, he got set up nice. Now, Boise played a pretty good game, and I know it looked, the score didn't look great with the 31-14, but at one point in time, it was 17-7, and Boise threw a touchdown. And so all of a sudden it was 17-14, and they called the touchdown back for a personal foul, which they then tried to talk about and show the video of and couldn't find it. So I was very confused by that call, and that really, really hurt Boise State, because instead of being 3 points down and having all the momentum, they were still 10 points down and got moved back 15 yards out of field goal range. And that pretty much, to me, was the end of the game for that one. But, kudos to Boise State. They had a great season. I think they definitely belonged. Everybody was talking about how bad Ashton Genty played. He had 100 yards against Penn State's defense, who hadn't given up a 100-yard rusher all year. So, I don't think that, that doesn't hold water. It was just they needed one other player, and their quarterback played great in the first half, but really struggled in the second half, and threw 3 interceptions, and that was the end of it for them.
All right, let's move on to the Texas Arizona State game, which for a while it looked like Texas was going to be romping through, and then all of a sudden Arizona State came alive. You got to love that guy Scadaboo. What a player he is! What a college player! I don't know if he's going to translate to the pros. I think he deserves a chance to, but he really played a great second half of that game and left everything, including his lunch, on the field before succumbing in overtime to Texas. But you know, this Texas team, Ewers, at the end of the game, he made the plays he had to make. But first of all, I heard that he's been offered $6 million in the transfer portal for next year from some team. I heard on the radio.
And, yeah, I don't know if that's accurate. I heard that he was offered 4 from a Big Ten team. But what he's going to do, I'm not sure. I don't know what his draft stock is right now, to be honest with you. I think, if Texas wins the national championship and he plays well in the semifinals and the finals, I think he can help himself and maybe parlay that into, moving up a little bit on the draft boards. I mean, let's be honest, quarterbacks are overdrafted every year. And he played really well last year. It's just this year he's been inconsistent and he's been hurt. And it hasn't looked good for him at times. But, he's still got a chance. I do not think he's going to be welcomed back as the starter at Texas. They're ready to move on. They probably should have moved on to Archie a couple of weeks ago, but they decided to stick with the veteran, and that you can't really say that was a bad decision because they're still playing football. So that remains to be seen. But I think there will be a market for him for sure in college football. I can't tell you right now which teams will want him, because I have to look and see, what the rosters look like, at the secondary transfer portal, because he ain't going in this one.
But at some point, when are these coaches going to take the bull by the horns? You go out and you recruit freshman quarterbacks every year. Every year you're bringing quarterbacks in, and you can't develop them. You have to sit there and go into the transfer portal. You have to get your NIL money and attract a 50-year, 60-year guy, a mercenary to come in. I mean, we're looking at what's going on with Notre Dame. Okay, Riley Leonard, I can't say he's better than expected, because Notre Dame probably played the easiest schedule of everybody in the Final Four right now. They outside of Texas A&M, if you want to throw USC in there as a competent, if not unspectacular opponent, they should be undefeated at this point. There's no reason they shouldn't be undefeated. So, I mean, what are you getting from bringing in these, fifth-year seniors? And what does it say about you as a coach that you went out, you sat in someone's living room, convinced their parents to put the kid's career in your hands, and you can't develop this kid, and you can't get a good kid? I said that you and I have been just talking about this as we started this. How can Notre Dame not get a top-ranked quarterback to come to their school and play there?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird how it's working out right now. It seems to me like people are still recruiting these quarterbacks, but these young kids don't want to sit, and if they don't get to play right away, they're moving on, and I think that's a mistake, because some of these kids are moving on and they're choosing the wrong schools, and then they're getting beat out, and then they're having to go to the third school. And it's kind of like, if you've gone to been to 3 schools and haven't played yet, question marks and red flags are going to come up. So, I think what you have to do is you have to recruit, kids as quarterbacks. You have to go out and get the best quarterback you can possibly find. You have to develop them. And then, what you also have to do is bring in, a veteran as well. I mean, that's what Ohio State's formula has been. They've been, they've been grooming quarterbacks themselves, and then they've been bringing in, transfer guys as well, just in case the young guys aren't ready. And, I'm very interested to see what happens in Columbus next year, because do they bring in another transfer, or do they go with, the young guys that they have? They've got Julian Sayin, who was the number one quarterback, a cycle ago. They got Tavian St. Clair, who is the number one quarterback this cycle. And then, Will Howard's going to be gone. So do they bring in another guy? I don't know. But I think it'll be interesting to see whether or not they trust one of these young guys to actually, start the year as the starting quarterback.
Yeah, it would be really interesting. But like I said, I as a growing up a Notre Dame fan, I just can't see how they can't recruit a quarterback and develop them. I mean, they're on TV every week. It's a legendary school, and I just don't see that. Well, we'll see. Maybe Riley Leonard will somehow run the table, but I don't see it in this offense the way they play it. I don't see that being able to be done. Overall, what would you give? This is the first year. I know they got to work some bugs out, but it has brought eyes to the college game. The only thing you got to say about it is the bowls have now become obsolete totally. There's no reason to play most of these bowl games. It's ridiculous. I mean, fans don't even go to them. I mean, outside of maybe the Alabama-Michigan game, name me another game you really paid attention to.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the BYU Colorado game just because it was kind of a weird night and it was on and there really wasn't anything else on. So I watched that, and I watched several of the games. But yeah, they definitely have lost their luster, but they lost their luster a long time ago. Even when the 4-team playoff was going on, it was kind of like if you didn't make the 4-team playoff, what the hell were these other games even, what did they mean? And a lot of the times the players opted out. And that's been true this year as well. If you look at that Michigan, I mean, that was the big thing for me with that Michigan. You talk about the Michigan-Alabama game. Michigan's backups and their freshmen beat Alabama's, starters. And that to me says a lot about where Michigan is at and where Alabama is at, because, they just could not get anything going. And everybody wants to, rag on Ohio State for losing to Michigan. Hell, their backups beat Bama, so they've got a good momentum going into next season, and that game meant something to them. I think it does mean something to these teams, whether it means anything or not to the fans. I think that's to be debated, but I do think it means something to these teams, because even if you don't get into the playoff, but you show up in the bowl game, and no matter who you have out on the field, if they play well and you can get, a nice win against a decent opponent, you can get some momentum going into next season. Not to mention you get practice, after your final game. You get that extra month or so of, seeing what your young kids have and getting some additional, snaps and film on practice tape. So I think it can be worthwhile for the teams. Whether or not the fans give a shit, I don't know. But it certainly can help a team trying to get into next season.
Well, and also if you're a junior or a sophomore, you get a leg up because you can show your coach in live action in a bowl game what you can actually do against a real opponent. So before you go to the spring game and in your off-season conditioning, that's the last thing he's going to remember about your year, which is pretty cool, because you can make a name for yourself.
Oh, no doubt. And my last point on that Texas Arizona State game was, Texas owned the line of scrimmage almost all day. In the second half, Scatabo got some runs going and was able to, get a few holes, but Texas was dominating the line of scrimmage. They just couldn't do anything on offense. And after a while, Texas's defense got worn out because they were on the field, for almost 37 minutes in the first 3.5 quarters. They were on the field for 37 minutes, and they just got worn out because the Texas offense could do nothing. And that to me was kind of surprising. And, Sam Leavitt, God bless him, he was doing everything he could to try and get something going, but Arizona State was missing their number one wide receiver, the kid who dominated the Big 12 all year long and was I think he had like 440 yards more than the next Arizona State wide receiver. And it just showed they just didn't have many weapons. And, he was running for his life and looking for something. There was nobody open because they just didn't have the guys on the outside. And that's, inevitably why they weren't able to win that game, because they certainly played hard enough. And Cam Scatabo certainly did everything he did. The kid ran for 143 yards on 30 carries, and then he led them in receiving as well with 8 catches for 100 yards. So and then threw a touchdown. So I don't know what else you wanted him to do.
No, I'd say Arizona State showed a lot this year. They like I said, they have a young coach, grew up in it's a hometown coach, and he loves coaching out there. Hopefully he'll stay there and keep it going, because they were an exciting team to watch. All right, let's move into the pros a little bit here. Last week of the season, we only got a few spots to get done. We'll start with the NFC, where the Buccaneers are playing against New Orleans. They win, they're in. You have the Falcons against Carolina. What do you think about the Buccaneers and Falcons? Well, first of all, let's look at the Falcons here. I understand Penix is would Notre Dame return a touchdown?
They took the opening kickoff back for a touchdown. It is now 20-3 Notre Dame. They've scored 17 points in the last 54 seconds. And Georgia, doesn't have a quarterback. So I do not see how Georgia's going to come back from this. And, let's give Marcus Freeman some credit. He got these guys ready to play. He had them believing in it. All they needed was Georgia to make a mistake. And that intercept or that fumble right before halftime, that was what they needed. And they capitalized on it. They scored a touchdown. And now they just took the opening kickoff back. And now it's 20-3 Irish. So I think Georgia's in big trouble.
What I was going to get to Atlanta Falcons. They go to Penix. I mean, I don't know. I understand Kirk Cousins was fading, but does Penix give them a realistic chance to do anything this year? It was a little too late. I don't know. I just, when I look at Atlanta right now, even if they make the playoffs with Penix, I don't think they're serious contenders. I don't know. It looked like they just gave up on whatever plan they had for this year 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't really understand it. I mean, I get it that Cousins was struggling, but he's been struggling for weeks. So if you were going to make this move, why didn't you make it 3 weeks ago and get Penix, some real game action? He's looked, pretty good considering he hasn't played all year. He looks like a guy that is definitely going to be a potential, franchise guy. But I agree with you. I don't understand why they did it when they did it. I felt like they should have just stuck with Cousins at that point because it just seems a little bit too little, too late to try and expect this rookie who's played 2 games to be able to go and now win you a Super Bowl. I mean, I agree with you. I think Atlanta's in big trouble. I do not see them being a team that can go and win it all with a kid who's played 2 games. I mean, I think that's a joke.
Well, I mean, especially when you were still, basically your fate was still in your hands. You stick with the veteran when your fate you're still in your hands this late in the season.
You paid him $200 million. You paid him $200 million. What are you giving up on a guy? You're the ones that gave him $200 million. So you need to stick it out and see whether or not he's got it. If it doesn't work out, you already drafted his replacement. By God, get rid of him next year or make him your backup. But why you turned the page on him right then, I don't get it. And I'm with you. It seems like they just gave up on the season because to me, that's what it looks like from an outside perspective.
Yeah, because, I mean, all you can say now is, okay, now we know we have a quarterback for next year we can build around. Good.
Yeah, that's great. So what about this year? You're right in line to potentially win. I mean, just that division sucked so bad that you had just the Buccaneers to contend with, and you'd already beaten them twice. So you didn't even have to overtake them record-wise. You just had to stay equal with them, and you were going to get the tiebreaker. So I agree with you 100%. I don't understand why they did it, and I think it's a big mistake because as bad as he was playing, and Kirk Cousins, I mean, he still has a lot more experience than a guy who's played 2 games.
And then we got, the Buccaneers hang on, they're in, and we will be looking at the playoffs. The big thing, the big game of the weekend is going to be the Lions against the Vikings. 2 14-win teams vying for who's going to be first place and who's going to be staying home and the best overall record. Really weird to have that happen in one division, and to have 2 teams with identical 14-2 records. I'm still not ready to everybody's. Yeah, I understand Sam Darnold's had a great year. Can't take anything away from him. He finally has seemed to find the coach who gets him, understands him, and has turned him around and has him playing well. But I want to see this week. I want to see him do it this week against Detroit. It's going to be one of those games, even with Detroit's defense being down, which you saw with Detroit. I mean, last week, some of the plays that they come up with, Ben Johnson comes up with, the hook and laterals and everything else, and you never know when they're going to do whatever. You're going to have to score if you're the Vikings, and that puts it on Sam's shoulders. I know you were a doubter with Sam too. Have you changed your opinion on him at all?
I have. I mean, I think I was wrong. That I will certainly admit. I thought they were going to be a horrible team this year with him as their starter. I wasn't alone in that thinking. No. There was a lot of people that thought that they were going to be. Most people picked them 4th in the division. If you go back and you do the research online and pull up people's picks, most people had the Vikings pick 4th in this division. So if you're sitting here telling me that you picked the Vikings to be 14-2, I call you a liar, because nobody was doing it. And I think, to me, this says more. I mean, it says something about Sam. I mean, he never quit on himself. Several teams did, but he never did. And he still believed he could be a starter in this league, and kudos to him. Most people thought he was a placeholder and that he was going to start the first 4 or 5 games max, and then they were going to move on and put the kid from Michigan out there. But, he got hurt and tore his knee and was out for the season. And Sam Darnold said, okay, here we go, buckle up. I think it says a lot about, the receivers they have in Minnesota. Right. They've got probably the best wide receiver in all of football, and Justin Jefferson. They've got Jordan Addison, which no one gives them credit for, but that was actually an amazing draft pick, considering I haven't really liked some of their draft moves over the last few years and some of their free agent moves, but you got to give them credit. It's worked out, and their receiving core has been good. The offensive line has been solid. They've had enough production at running back by bringing in, that was the thing they were really missing last year. They gave up Dalvin Cook and didn't bring anybody else in. And then this year they went out and got Aaron Jones, and that's been very, very helpful to them. But it's crazy to me to sit there and look. Packers are 11-5, and then you got 2 teams at 14-2, all from the NFC North. I mean, that's nuts. And this game is going to be, I'm kind of leaning towards the Vikings in this game. The Lions are super banged up, and that secondary for Detroit is missing a lot of pieces. Not to mention they're missing Aiden Hutchinson, who's their primary pass rusher.
Is the game in Minnesota, or is the game in Detroit?
The game is actually in Detroit at Ford Field. It's the 8:20 game on Sunday night, and it'll be in Detroit.
Yeah, well, they're both domes, so it shouldn't make a big deal there. Just the home crowd should help the Lions a little bit. I know that it'll be tough for anybody wearing purple to get into the building if they want to stay alive, probably, because the Lions people will be going after them, rowdiness. But I'll tell you, the other thing is, I'll tell you, it's another example of the McVay tree, O'Connell. I mean,
he's a great coach.
I have never seen a coach this young. I remember when we used to talk about the Bill Walsh tree, the homegrooms, all these guys that came out of the Bill Walsh mold. McVay, I don't think he's 40 years old yet, or if he is, he's very early 40s. And look at the coaches around the league that he has already gotten made head coaches. That is just ridiculous. And it's also another good thing is like this whole thing that he and Shanahan have brought to the NFL is they're pushing the retreads out the door. Let's bring the new minds in. Let's see what they can do.
Yeah, it's worked in some cases. It's certainly worked in Minnesota. This guy has proven that he is one of the next young up-and-coming coaches in the league. And, as I mentioned, this is why I'm kind of leaning towards Minnesota is not only were those guys missing that we talked about, but I didn't even mention it yet. David Montgomery's out. And, that's a problem. I forget what they call him now.
I heard a little hope on one of the shows today. There's a little hope, a glimmer of hope that he could play. And then they didn't say sure, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a big problem because those two guys together is what makes this team go. And with him being banged up, I thought I saw something that said he was out. But I could be wrong on that. Let me double check. Yeah, he's at least for last week he was out. I don't know. That's the 31st. They ruled him out. So I'm pretty sure he's out for this game and not going to play. He may be able to come back afterwards, but that's what's kept this team so hard to stop is they have weapons on the outside. Jared Goff is obviously playing very, very well, but then they've got this two-headed monster that has been tough to stop. So let's see here. It's an MCL injury. I'm pretty sure that he is probably not going to be on the field against the Vikings. That's what I've been hearing.
They're probably gonna make a game time decision so they can make the Vikings have to plan for him anyways, just in case. So, you'll
definitely.
Gamesmanship. Back to Darnold for a minute. Would you? I think the Vikings have to re-sign him. I think he's only 28 years old. JJ McCarthy's what 22, 23. So, I mean, you don't even know what you got there. So you have to re-sign him. But for how much? Do you think he's earned a $50 million contract? Or would you go to him, O'Connell, and say, look, Sam, for real, do you want to keep this going? Does it mean that much? I mean, what do you slot him at? 30?
I look at it like the Baker Mayfield contract. I would build off of that. I would say, look, this is what Baker did. He had a resurgence last year in Tampa. Tampa took a shot on him when other teams were not calling. They made him their starter. He won the job. He threw for this many yards. He threw for this many touchdowns. He was rewarded with basically a 3-year, $100 million contract. Sam, that's what we'd like to do with you. 3 years, close, a little bit, maybe 100, 110, 115, 3 years, $115 million. And I think that's probably what they'll try and go with. I think Sam would be really smart to take that because with same with Baker's situations, the Vikings were the one team that came a calling and wanted him and signed him and brought him in and believed in him and then made him a viable player in this league, which he's never been. So to run away from that, I think would be ridiculous and very, very dumb in my opinion. But could he maybe I don't know, but could he potentially get more money somewhere? I don't know. But I think that's what the Vikings will probably come at him with. I think they'll say, hey, listen, we'll give you 3 years, $110 million to bring you back as our starter. And, then what do they do with McCarthy? Do they keep him and put him as the backup Do they trade J.J. McCarthy? I don't know. I've heard some rumors that there's speculation that they may be shopping him. I think it'll all come down to what happens with the Darnold deal and what they sign him to.
This is the kind of thing that drives me crazy. Nothing against him, because the team I root for, the Giants, is one of the teams is gonna be looking for a quarterback. But even you go back to at Michigan, what has J.J. McCarthy ever shown you that makes you believe that he can be a franchise quarterback? I'm not saying that he can't. I mean, he didn't have to, but he never had to really do any heavy lifting there at Michigan. The way they were a running team, basically he played within. He was kind of a system quarterback there, and now you haven't seen what he could do in the pros yet. So what kind? I mean, they could probably get a third and a fourth, maybe a fourth round, maybe that kind of a situation for him. But also, it might behoove him to sit there where he is, if he has the choice, because maybe this is Sam Darnold's 1 year, like Vinny Testaverde had with the Jets in 1998, never to be recovered from again. You know what I mean? You don't know that for sure. He deserves all the accolades he's gotten this year, but it's not like the first 5 years he wasn't effing up. So I don't know if McCarthy, if I'm McCarthy, I don't know if I'd be, if he's willing to sit there and be the backup.
Oh, I definitely think it would be a smart move for McCarthy, especially considering he's, trying to fight back from this ACL tear, trying to go somewhere where he's going to be projected as the starter. I think would be a terrible move for him. He needs to go somewhere where he can sit, get healthy, learn how to be an NFL quarterback, because he hasn't taken a snap in the league yet. So I think if he's smart and he's listening to the right people, he will come back and stay in Minnesota if he has that option. I just know that the Vikings are in win now mode. They've got, even if they keep Darnold and are able to sign him, I think they'll, I think it'll be more in the $30 to $35 million range instead of the 40 to 60. And you can win with that. You can build with that. So do they want to add pieces to that or no? I think they do, but it'll be very interesting to see what happens there, because I don't know whether or not they'll want to sign Darnold to a 5 or 6, 7 year deal. I don't believe they will. I think they'll want to see more. I mean, he's basically done it for one season. He's done it for 16 games. He's looked very good. Does that mean that he's going to be great in this league for the rest of his career? No, it does not. I've seen guys play good one season, but there's very few that can do it year in, year out. So I want to see him do it twice.
All right, let's go over to the AFC. The Broncos are still basically in the hunt. If they win, I believe they're in. On the bubble, you got the Dolphins, who've been fading fast. You have the Bengals hoping for a miracle with Joe Burrow, if he can pull it out against Pittsburgh. I don't know how much that's going to help or work out with Pittsburgh. What do you think? Let's look at that game to begin with. Pittsburgh still is going against Baltimore for the division title, right? They're tied.
Yeah, the Browns play the Ravens.
Right.
The last game of the season on Saturday, and if the Ravens win, they are the champs. If the Ravens lose and the Steelers win, they are the champs. So okay. It all comes down, and the Bengals are playing the Steelers.
Right. And
so
the Bengals, their playoff game too. So
correct. If the Bengals can knock off the Steelers, then they could potentially sneak in, but they need some help.
When you think about the year that they were comparing the years, I was watching one of the shows this afternoon because I guess the Pro Bowl rosters came out today.
Yeah,
and
Pat Mahomes isn't on it.
Yeah, who cares? First of all, the Pro Bowl is a joke, anyways. It was a joke when they used to play football, really. mean, for the most part, if you look at his stats compared to Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen, it doesn't measure up this year. Yeah, he's won. He's won. He's lost only one game, and that's great. He's one of the great winners of all time. But this has not been one of his great statistical years. It's just not. And the people who care about these things anymore, the All-Star games, the All-Pro names, and stuff like that, it's just ridiculous. That's a popularity contest. I don't worry about. I'm sure Pat Mahomes is sitting there going, "Well, okay, I needed something to just wake me up for the playoffs, but really, I'm here to win championships anyways." I mean, it's not, and his goal is to be playing in the Super Bowl, so he wouldn't be at the game anyways. So why is anybody making any kind of a deal about it?
I don't know. I just know that he is. I mean, if I had to take a quarterback right now and could pick anybody in the league, I would take Patrick Mahomes. Sorry.
Right.
I mean, that's who I would take. I mean,
that's just common thinking there. It's not. I mean, there's nothing he can't do, and he plays through injuries. He plays better with injuries. It seems. Take away weapons, he finds a way to beat you. He's just got that thing, whatever it is. I don't know if it's a clutch gene or born under a right star. He just knows how to win. So that's what he's all about. When you look at the other three quarterbacks we just mentioned, the three that are in the Pro Bowl, does Burrow deserve to be mentioned in the MVP running? Or
I think so. I think so. I mean, he's carried that team. I mean, for whatever reason, their defense has just not been the same this year. And you can point at a lot of different things as to why. I certainly don't think Alarumo has forgotten how to coach. I just don't think their personnel is as good, and they just haven't played as a unit as well. But Joe Burrow's thrown for 4,600 yards, 42 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. The fact that they're 8-8 with those kind of numbers is just crazy to even think about. And he's carried that team on his back. I mean, he's to throw for almost 4,700 yards and 42 touchdowns with 8 interceptions. This may be the best year he's had.
I think he's right up there. I mean, and no particular running game either.
No.
So everybody knows he's passing on almost every down. And it's been an amazing year for Burrow. If they could ever get out of September with a winning record, well, maybe they could stick in with these guys, but they never do. They put themselves in a hole, it seems, every year. And this year they put themselves in a deep hole and couldn't seem to get out of it. When you look at what's going on in the NFL right now, the other thing that everybody's making a big deal about is Saquon Barkley not going for the record this week. What's your feelings about that?
I think it's smart. I think it's smart. I mean, if he were to go out there and try and beat some, record and get hurt, that would be the end of the, of the Eagles. I mean, that would be it. So it's like, do you want to win a Super Bowl, or do you want to have a record attached to your name? I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I think it says a lot about Saquon Barkley that he'd be willing to sit out this game. I think it says a lot about him, and I think they can beat the Giants without him. And I think it's a very smart move, and I think it says a lot about him that he would be willing to do that. And I think it's a good move. There's no reason to play this week. They want to win the championship. They want to go to the Super Bowl, and if you want to do that, you've got to have Saquon Barkley to get it done.
When you think about that, as you just said, the Giants, a lot of flack around here for the Giants by the Giant fans who I really have no respect for outside of myself. I don't seem anymore to make a big deal because they beat the Colts last week. These are guys that are out there, they're professional athletes trying to at least show other teams, if they're not going to be in New York, other teams that they don't quit on the season. They play hard. And if you are a Giant fan, and you're worried about the draft, you've drank the Kool-Aid, Kuiper's Kool-Aid, and he's wrong most of the time when he talks about anything. And what quarterback do you think you could bring in here next year that's going to change? You could bring back Tom Brady. The Giants need so much that one quarterback is not going to come in and make a difference. You're going to have to go out and actually, if you do have the number one draft choice and you're the Giants, trade it. Trade it to somebody like the Raiders, who are stupid enough to think that a quarterback can come in and turn their fortunes around, and start drafting the team you want to have here. I don't know if Dable will be back. I don't know if Shane will be back. But I know one thing. Right now, the Giants have so many holes that you can't bring one quarterback in and hope to change their fortune. What do you think about that?
I think the Giants are probably a little bit closer than you'd think, just because of the 3-13 record. It looks really, really bad, but I think they've got, I think they've got some pieces, man. I think getting Burns was huge. He's a decent edge rusher. I think that the offensive line is improved. They still need some help up there. I agree with you. And when me and you were talking off air, and you mentioned that you'd like to see them, get a difference maker at tight end. I think they need that. I think they drafted the kid out of Penn State last year, but he hasn't really proved that he can make a huge difference. So there's definitely they need help. I think a quarterback would definitely be helpful, but I just don't know. I'm not in love with any of these guys in the draft. And to me, I think it would behoove them to bring in a veteran to compete with Drew Lock. If you bring Drew Lock back, I can't remember whether or not he's under contract for next year or not.
I think it's 1 year, but no one's going to grab him, so I'm sure you can deal with him.
I think you could bring him back if you wanted him. My question is, who else do you get? I think you got to bring somebody else in. Even if you bring Lock back, you got to bring a veteran in and see what's what. I just don't. I'm just not in love with any of these guys that are coming out in this 2025 draft. I don't think any of them are immediate starters, and I just don't see Jaden Daniels. I don't see Bo Nix. I don't see any of that in this class.
Maybe just because I'm an old-time Giant fan, and tight end has always been a big part of their offense for as long as I've been alive, and outside of maybe the last 5 years. But who was the tight end the Raiders had before they got Bowers, the kid from Notre Dame?
Michael Mayer.
I mean, why don't you sit there and go to the Raiders and go, if the Raiders, if you're in front of the Raiders, go give us Mayer in your first round, and we'll flip flop with you.
I would.
And then you got two tight ends.
I love that idea. I think Theo Johnson. I mean, he's not a bust. The kid they got from Penn State last year.
No.
He had 30 catches for 331 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he's not hopeless. He just needs a little bit more work. He was kind of raw coming out. But if you could get Theo Johnson and Michael Mayer, who I think he's just been slowed a little bit by injuries, but Michael Mayer coming out was one of the best tight end prospects in the last 10 years in my mind. Obviously not as good as Brock Bowers, but that's not saying anything. I think he's a real deal tight end prospect, and I think if they could get him and bring him in to the mix, that would be huge for the Giants.
The other thing we talked about on the phone is, can I see Hyatt for a complete game? Just once. Just put him out there, because it's die right now. You're not going to go anywhere. Put him out there for the whole game and show the fan base why he's a bust or why you don't like him, or give him a chance to prove he deserves to come back next year. And I mean, just think in my mind, if you're able to pull off the Mayer thing, Hyatt, you straighten him out. You already got Neighbors. You got Johnson, and you got what's his name? The slot receiver. I can't.
Slayton or Wan'Dale Robinson.
Wan'Dale Robinson. That's five potential good receivers. I mean, right there.
I don't get it with Jalen Hyatt. He's got 8 catches all year for 62 yards. He's been targeted 18 times. I don't understand.
Neighbors get 18 targets in a game.
Yeah, it's one of the weirder things I've ever seen. Malik Neighbors has 162 targets in the season. So do the math there. That's over 10 targets a game. I don't understand it. I would think you'd want to at least see what you have there, but they just, for whatever reason, don't go to him on the field. I mean, I don't know. I'm not at practice every day, so I don't know if he's got an issue with route running or learning the playbook. I have no idea. But this is a guy that you invested in with your draft pick. You would think you would at least put him on the field, especially now, considering that your season's over.
And it's not like you've seen him out there for long periods of time. They've never put him out there at all. He's never had where you sat there in the first half and maybe he's been on 20 plays. No, he's not. It never even had that chance. They put him out there for a play, and then he's back on the bench for whatever time. I have no idea what that. And like you pointed out to me on the phone the other day, he scored 5 touchdowns against Alabama.
Yeah, in one game.
And Alabama's those guys are all playing in the NFL right now.
Yeah, he's had 2 targets in the last 5 games. So I just have no idea what the thinking is there, and I'd love to hear what the issue is with him not playing.
What do you think about the potential of Rodgers coming back to play with the Jets next year, or is it done?
I think it's done. I really do. I do not see. Them continuing this experiment. I mean, I don't know. It just went so bad, and I honestly, Rodgers played pretty well the last 8 or 9 games. He's been, he's improved tremendously and gotten way better. But you look at him, and you can't say that Aaron Rodgers doesn't know how to play football. I mean, it's the Jets, okay? And, whether it's Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson or whoever you want it to be, you put him on you put a Jets uniform on him, and it just does not look good. And that's what's happened here. There's just been so many issues with the Jets this season, and why they decided to fire their coach when they did. I'm still trying to figure that out, because that made no sense to me. Their defense has been worse since Robert Saleh got fired, and I just don't understand why they thought that would help things. I mean, it's just been like it's been like they've been leaderless since that move, and it's just typical Jets bullshit.
Well, the other thing, I've heard it mentioned many times, they call the Jets. They say they have a roster, they don't have a team, which shows it plays out on the defensive side of the ball. 2 years ago, they're all telling us they're the best thing since the Chicago Bears of '85, and they hadn't even won anything yet. And now they're, Sauce Gardner's taking 7 steps back. I mean, he can't make a tackle, he can't make an interception. Here's a guy who was the defensive rookie of the year, and now everybody throws his way because he can't get out of it way. Their defense had some kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say they're overrated, but I hate when people start talking to me about, this is the 3rd-ranked defense. The statistics can be skewed any way you want to make things happen. Look at their record. When's the last time the Jets, when they needed to, made a big stop? That's what I look for in the defense. When the defense is out there, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs defense is a great example of it. When they have to make a stop, they make a stop. I don't know what they're ranked.
I don't either. It doesn't matter. They've got Chris Jones. They've got Steve Spagnuolo. They've got the secondary guys. They've got everything they want. This Jets defense, like I said, it's gone from not great to worse ever since they got rid of the coach who designed everything. And I'm just confused as to that decision. It's typical Jets bullshit, firing him when they did. It made no sense. As I told you, I don't even like him. But if you were going to go with him for this season, let him coach throughout the entire season and don't fire him. I don't even remember what it was, 5-6 games in. That was just stupid. And it made no sense. And, they drafted the kid out of Arizona State, I believe it was, who has shown some promise. Honestly, the Will McDonald, he's played way better this year than he did last year. But how do you even evaluate him because the team is so bad? I think he has 10 sacks this year, so he's not bad. CJ Mosley has to go. He's only played in 4 games, and they're paying him a boat ton of money. He should have been released a year ago, Joe. It makes no sense. And then you got Quinnen Williams, who's one of the best defensive tackles in the league, and you need to build around him. So this defense to me is it's a head scratcher. But getting rid of the coach when they did has just been the worst move you could have possibly made, in my opinion.
All right, with the time we got left here, going into next week for the NCAAs, if the score holds true to form right now, it looks like Notre Dame should be able to hang on, hopefully. Well, it's still a lot of time left with a 10-point lead.
Georgia just scored, so they cut it to 20-10, and Georgia has the ball, but it looks like they just got a false start, so they're going to have to punt. So this game is not over. There's a lot of time left, and if Notre Dame makes a mistake, Georgia will pounce on them. So I'm not ready to hand anybody the trophy just yet in this one.
But when we look at the potential for next week, let's put it so let's say Georgia or Notre Dame's able to hang on. Does that make the Texas to Ohio State game quasi to really a national championship game, or can you foresee a Penn State or Notre Dame going toe to toe with either one of those two teams?
Penn State, say what you want about them, they played really, really well, especially ever since that Ohio State game where they didn't play that bad in that game. They were legitimate in that game, and they just couldn't get in the end zone in that first down and goal from the 3. They couldn't get in, and that's more of a product of the Buckeyes defense than I think it was. The Penn State.
The play calling wasn't exactly the best play calling you've ever seen either.
They went with what they do, man. That's what they do. They run the football and they run play action off of it. They beat SMU 38-10. They beat Boise 31-14. I mean, I could see Penn State beating either of these two teams. Will they? I don't know, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Penn State, beat either one of these teams.
Now, the next week and when they play, it's Monday and Friday.
The Texas the one game is on Thursday. The 9th is the Penn State will play in the Orange Bowl against either Notre Dame or Georgia. That is on January 9th at 7:30, and then the Texas Ohio State game in Texas in Dallas is on Friday the 10th at 7:30. So it'll be Thursday, Friday.
Oh, okay. So that's good. I for some reason I had Monday in my mind. I was like, that makes no sense. So good. Straighten that out for me. What do we got on man coverage going on this week?
Yeah, we are going to be breaking down, obviously, this game here, the Notre Dame and the Georgia game, and then we'll be doing a deep dive into the Ohio State Oregon game. Obviously, that one is going to require some additional talk because I could talk about it all day long, and then obviously we'll go over the Texas Arizona State game and how that played out, and the 2 overtime thriller, when maybe it shouldn't have been, but it was, and then also we're going to talk a little bit about the seeding and what they need to do differently next year. I think it's been proven that they need to just take the top 12 teams and then seed them based on that. And the top 4 teams get a bye, and then the rest of the teams follow up that as they should. And then also, just looking at this, I'm still trying to figure out how, Oregon was number 1 all year long, gets a bye, but then has to play Ohio State in the second round. Even if they were to win, then they were going to have to play Texas and then either Georgia or whoever comes out from that side. They did Oregon no favors in this thing. So there's obviously some kinks to be worked out in this 12-team format, and that it's the NCAA, so I'm not surprised that they effed it up.
That's for sure. All right. Well, did you have a good New Year's?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty low key, buddy. It was me and my 6-year-old watching the ball drop, and then we both passed out. So that was pretty much the extent of it. But we had a really good Christmas and a really good couple of days off where we got to relax, and we got a few more days here. We got one work day tomorrow, and then a couple of couple of weekend days, and then it's back to business on Monday as school gets back going on the 6th. So hopefully we'll be ready for that.
Yeah, I got one day tomorrow, and then a weekend off, and then I guess we'll be back up, ramp it up to full speed at my job for the next few weeks before we get another extra day off. So we will see what happens then. Nate, always a pleasure. I will see you next Thursday. Next Thursday, we will be talking before the first semifinals. We'll look at the NFL playoffs coming up, give you our picks and who we think has a chance, who are the frauds, who are the real ones, and who has a chance to maybe do somebody dirty, like maybe the Buccaneers or some team like that could take one of the big high-rolling teams out. And it'll be interesting to see whether it be Detroit or whether it be the Vikings. A 14-game team, a 14-win team has to go somewhere to play on the road to open the playoffs. 14 wins. And
once again makes no sense. They've talked about this for years, always giving the conference champions the bye, and that's kind of what we're dealing with in college now. It kind of makes no sense that you're going to have a team that won 14 games that doesn't get a bye and going to have to potentially go on the road. It just doesn't seem to make much sense. It kind of devalues
the only time I ever saw it worse, the year the Miami Dolphins went undefeated, the championship game was played in Pittsburgh, even though they were undefeated at the time.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
No logic at all.
No.
All right, my friend, have a great rest of your night. Enjoy it. Let's see if Notre Dame can hang on. I hope they can. I'd love to see Notre Dame Penn State next week. And go Irish. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, they're driving it right now, man. They're running it right down Georgia's throat. It's not like Riley Leonard's throwing the ball all over the place. They're just running the football mainly to the outside and picking up chunk yardage doing it. So kudos to Marcus Freeman and the Irish. They're not letting the SEC team push them over. I think that's one thing we can honestly say after watching these playoffs, watching these bowl games. The SEC dominance is not what it used to be. The Big Ten, independent teams, doesn't really matter who it is. The SEC has lost a little bit of their luster based upon, watering down the league and just, Bama's dynasty is over. And that kind of created some of the allure of the SEC. It was like, the SEC's always in the final. Well, no, Bama was always in the finals. And I know Georgia had their little run the last few years, but up until that, it was Alabama who was in the finals every year. I mean, LSU had the couple of seasons, the one with Joe Burrow, obviously. But other than that, it was Bama's dynasty that built that league up so much. And that dynasty's over. Nick Saban's on the media side of things now, and he's no longer calling the shots, and you can tell.
Now he's doing Verbo commercials. My God. Who saw that coming?
I don't know,
right,
man. But
have a good rest of the night.
The one with him in the hot tub cracks me up every time.
Exactly. All right. I'll talk to you during the weekend. We'll be on next week at 5:45 on Thursday. Talk to you guys later. Have a good rest of your week.
Sounds good, buddy.